So the Battlefield 6 beta is finally here, guys. I played so far for around 5 hours, and in today's video I'm going to give you guys my first impressions and some initial gameplay here, but I think it's fair enough to say that this time I'm happy that they definitely cooked. As always, if you want to stay up to date with everything in Battlefield, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We'll be going over everything around the game here on this channel. I'll also be streaming the beta a bunch. If you guys still need keys, you can get them as drops over on my Twitch channel as well, so feel free to go there. And as always, thank you guys so much for the ongoing support. You've been absolutely killing it. But without further ado, let's just get into the video. So there's a lot to go over here, so I'm going to try and keep it fairly concise. First off, the reason that you'll see my face cam in the footage is because the client did have a few problems with making the NVIDIA app record there. I just couldn't get it working, so I ended up having to use OBS. But I do want to touch on everything, especially a lot of the vehicle stuff. I know you guys often come to my channel for that sort of thing, you know, classes, maps. We're going to get into everything. But initially, I think I can definitely say that we're back, guys. The game feels really fantastic to play. The sound design is just incredible. You know, the atmosphere of the game is there. I'm sure anybody, and feel free to comment down below if you've tried the game and what you think about it as well. If you've tried it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It just feels like a proper Battlefield again. Now, a lot of people had reservations about the movement. Some people said it was too fast. Some people even said it was too slow. For me, the movement feels okay. I think it's in a good spot. I felt like a lot of the time I tried things like jump shooting or sliding into engagements. I got punished for that and I ended up dying because the way it works in this game is that your aim is actually tied to your reticle, to your optic. It's not tied to the center of the screen, and when you do things like jumping, your reticle just bobs all over the place. And so I think those mechanics aren't really viable in a lot of offensive situations, and at least I didn't notice any situations really where people were abusing them. So it's clear that that is not becoming the meta. Hopefully that should put some worries to rest. Now, I mostly spent my time playing the closed weapons part of Conquest, so I haven't really spent too much in the open part yet. But weapons for me aren't really too plentiful in this beta. There's just like one assault rifle that you start off with, there's one SMG for the engineer class, you've got one sniper rifle, there's one LMG, and you do unlock a few more. So I've unlocked the first carbine, and then I've got the second assault rifle. And so far, they seem to feel a little bit hit and miss in terms of power. So the starting assault rifle is very, very good. I think it's my favorite weapon in the game. The carbine, which is the M4A1, also really, really good. But the SMG to me feels a little bit like a pea shooter. As soon as I picked that thing up as the engineer class, I just found that I wasn't really getting any kills, and so very quickly I of course switched over to the carbine, to the M4, and found that to be much more enjoyable. Now, that doesn't really paint much of a picture for the whole game. There's going to be tons and tons of weapons available there, and I've still got some to unlock for the beta as well. Not to mention there's lots of attachments to unlock. You know, the game only gives you like one for each of the different slots here, so as you use the weapon you can unlock some more attachments in the beta and really kit your weapon out to its full potential. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt, but just something I wanted to mention. Now, the three maps that we have available at the moment, two of them are mostly infantry, but with some armor thrown in there. So you've got a tank and you've got an IFV. There's one on Gibraltar and one set in Cairo, Egypt. And then you've got a third one with all of the vehicles, so jets and attack helicopters, set up in the mountains in Tajikistan. All three of the maps are very like high octane, a lot of action. You're going to be sprinting between objectives, constantly in firefights, lots of different lanes. And I think depending on what you're looking for from a Battlefield game, that may be something you like, or it may be something that you're not too fond on, honestly. I think some people may want maps that are a little bit larger, maybe give you some time to breathe. So the one on Cairo is interesting. You've got a lane around the outside where you can drive the tanks, but it's still pretty cramped. And then if you go sort of into the inner city, there you have many, many smaller lanes that you can traverse as infantry, but the armor can't get to. So it's a little bit like playing something like Grand Bazaar. And that one for me was actually my least favorite map of the three. My second favorite map, so the one that's in the middle for me, is Gibraltar. I feel like getting from flag to flag is very easy. So any of the flags on the map are really, really accessible to you, whereas on Cairo, it feels like you're more sort of stuck to your lanes a little bit there. And then the biggest of the three, the one in Tajikistan, Obviously, you're going to have a lot more breathing time there, and there's going to be a lot more sniper gameplay and stuff like that. There's also a lot more elevation in that map, so, you know, there are peaks, there are mountains that you can climb up, and certain structures, but there's no, like, crazy verticality in any of these three maps. You're not going to find, you know, for example, a skyscraper like on Siege of Shanghai, but again, on the other two maps that are slightly more infantry-focused, you've also got plenty of 2- and 3-story buildings. You're going to see people firing out of the windows and whatnot. And like overall, I found them all enjoyable, but I do just hope that these are not the biggest maps in the game. I do hope there are some maps out there that also hit some of those other beats and what Battlefield players are looking for. I think there's one called Mirak Valley, something like that. That's supposed to be the biggest map in the game. Also, Operation Firestorm, I'm assuming that's going to be quite large as well. Now, the destruction in the game is, of course, just incredible. Like, we all know what the destruction looks like, but experiencing it is another thing entirely. You know, just being in buildings, having them crumbling around you, and likewise using the vehicles, shooting people in buildings and just seeing the walls crumble down. It's not something that's gonna get old fast, I tell you that. And I'm really thankful that they've actually chosen this time to focus on like general destructibility of the buildings and the surrounding areas instead of going for like a set piece like Levolution. I mean, maybe that's going to exist in the game as well, but I think that does get old quickly, whereas Destruction doesn't. You know, it's always got its use cases there. You can also use it for gameplay reasons like blowing out floors and stuff like that, so really, really impressed with the Destruction so far. Alright, let's talk now a little bit about the classes. So, I feel like the Assault class is very, very good. You get one training tree in the Assault class, and one of the perks there allows you to basically heal up faster. So even though the med pen for the Assault class doesn't heal you anymore, it almost feels like you don't need it regardless, because you get this passive heal that kicks in so quickly, and not only does it kick in fast, but it heals you faster than any of the other classes. Add to that then that we still have this weapon sling system in the game, so you can carry around a shotgun. And let me just mention the shotgun, by the way, because we didn't cover that when I talked about the weapons. It is ridiculously OP. It's crazy hipfire, the range that it one-shots people. This thing needs to be nerfed like crazy. I think we all knew this was coming. We've seen it from the reveal event, but just wanted to mention that it's really making the Assault class feel quite overpowered at the moment. Now, the Support class is, of course, very, very good as well. With this class, so you can revive people the regular way just by holding E on them, but you can also use your defibs to either give them a quick little zap and revive them with 50% HP, or you can rub your paddles together and revive them with 100%. Then you've got Medic Bag on X here. You throw this down, of course, it resupplies health and ammo. And then you've got this deployable cover that you can put down, which is actually quite useful in this game because you can use it to shore up buildings that have otherwise been destroyed, right, and make yourself a little bit of makeshift cover there. Now, the Engineer class is the Engineer class, right? It takes out vehicles, it does a great job of repairing, it's pretty much what you'd expect, but there is still something that is immensely broken on there. Now, DICE have already told us that they are removing the dual launchers for engineers, so I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm sure that is going to be the case, but at the moment, the way the beta stands, you can equip both an RPG and a Stinger. Now, my definition of a launcher is both an RPG and it's a Stinger, so I don't know why that is still available. So what that means is every single engineer out there is running around with both an RPG and a Stinger. They're able to take out armor, they're able to take out aircraft without having to choose between the two. So if you're flying in an attack helicopter or you're flying in the jet, you can be 100% sure that on the enemy team, there's going to be like 10, 15 engineers, all of them with Stingers. They don't have to make that very important choice anymore. Am I going to be anti-armor or am I going to be anti-air? Again, I really hope that they just haven't managed to get the change in there and it's going to be coming in the full game. But part of me does worry that when they said launchers, they meant you can't take, for example, a Javelin and an RPG, but you can still take the Stinger, which I think you'll agree is just ridiculously broken, so I really do hope that they're going to change that. Now, as for the game modes, we have 3 on offer. There's Conquest, there's Breakthrough, and there's Domination. I spent most of my time playing Conquest, and I found that to be the most fun, but you know, maybe that's just because I'm more of a Conquest guy. I did play a couple of rounds of Domination, and that was also a ton of fun. So it's only 8 versus 8, but it's very fast-paced. It also felt like the gameplay was a little bit more snappy. Maybe the netcode was better because of the fewer players. But I also felt like DICE have actually put a decent amount of time into balancing this mode and making sure that the objectives that you have to cap here haven't just been sort of shoehorned in there the same way that we would generally see DICE do this with additional modes. Instead, they've been well thought out and put in interesting areas. Now, my experience with Breakthrough, I played a couple of rounds of this, and it was a bit hit and miss. So I played on the map on Tajikistan as the attackers, and we could not take the first sector. Now, it might be because we don't know the map. It might be because I was playing with a lot of people who just don't know how to play Breakthrough. So, you know, take this again with a grain of salt. But I think that first sector probably needs to be looked into. I also tried this out when I played in labs, and it feels like absolutely nothing has changed, to be honest with you, with that first sector. I gave them feedback there and then saying, hey, this sector is, you know, way too defender-sided here, and the attackers don't really have a chance. It doesn't seem like it's changed, so I think they really need to look into Breakthrough there. But I also played Breakthrough on the Siege of Cairo, and that was a very different story. It wasn't really one-sided one way or the other. It felt fairly even, although the defenders did end up winning that one again. That being said, I think defenders are always going to win on maps where people don't really know the lanes and the layouts, because after all, they can just sort of put up their barricades and sit there and wait for the enemy to come to them. It's a lot more challenging for the attackers. Okay, with that said, let's talk a little bit about the vehicles in the game. I've spent probably about half my playtime, honestly, in vehicles. I've done a lot of IFV play, some tank play, some jets, and some helicopters as well. So for the armor, and this kind of goes for all the vehicles, they really feel like glass cannons in this game. So I'm just going to say the IFV, guys, is absolutely ridiculously overpowered. Like, you will just destroy infantry with the high explosive shells. You get 12 of them, you've got a quick reload, and then you're spamming out another 12, and I think you get like 200 rounds, right? There is attrition in this game, so you will have to resupply eventually, but 200 rounds is quite a lot to go through there. But they have very, very slow turning speeds, very slow turret turning speeds as well, and so that's why I say they're glass cannons. The way you play with them, especially on these two smaller maps that are mainly infantry focused, the one in Cairo and the one in Gibraltar, is that you're going to be slowly edging down the road and then sort of pillaring out, seeing if you can get some infantry kills, maybe get some pot shots on a tank, and then going back into cover again. You're really not going to be storming forward, because you will die super, super fast to the engineers. RPGs in this game do a lot of damage. Now, you do get a self-repair ability on the IFV, but once you've gone past like a third or 2/3 of your health bar, you guys can see these little dots at the bottom there, that repair will not work. Then you've got to go all the way back to the attrition crate to repair, or you could have an engineer repair you. So actually, I think they've put a lot of emphasis in this game on the engineers repairing the vehicles. If you have a bunch of engineers backing you up, you will actually do so much work on the enemy team. If you don't have any and you kind of play stupid and the enemy team have a bunch of engineers, then you'll go down and really not be much of a threat at all. Now, just like in previous games, you can go in and out of first person, and when you're in first person, you can also do a bit of a zoom. I found this to be a little bit sluggish. Like, when you zoom in and out, there is a bit of a delay, so I'm not sure if that's a bug. And likewise, if you're playing in a tank, you know, if you switch from your main tank cannon to the HMG or the LMG, whatever your secondary weapon is, there's like this weird delay before you can fire, and I found that to be like so frustrating that I just didn't even bother switching to my main tank shell, because the HMG simply did that much damage against infantry that it was sort of unnecessary. But again, just to reiterate, like the sound and the feel of just being in an IFV and destroying a building with high explosive shells, seeing the infantry trying to cower inside and being like, no, 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 we're gonna get you, man. Like, it's super, super rewarding. You guys who watch me stream will know that I had a massive smile plastered across my face pretty much the whole time I was playing the game. So I think it's fair to say that the armor are actually my favorite vehicles in the game right now. Second place, we have the jets. Now, the jets definitely are going to take some more time, and I do intend to put out a full video on this tomorrow on my experiences with all the vehicles in more detail. But as a quick summary here, I think there is some sort of speed control model. So originally I'd said it was like Battlefield 2042, and the faster you go, the tighter you turn. That actually isn't the case. I've experimented with slowing down, and that definitely has an effect on how tight you can turn. The jets are only available on one map, so I haven't had like a ton of time to play with them. And the map itself, again, feels kind of small for the jets. A lot of the time you'll fly out of bounds, and you can't even see where those bounds are on your air radar. And also the air radar, I think, is broken. It's super zoomed in, so when a jet flies past you, it literally flies over the air radar for like a split second, and then it's gone, so the air radar is kind of just like obsolete at the moment, but, you know, hopefully that's going to be fixed for the full release of the game. But again, they are glass cannons, so if you take damage from AA missiles, or you take damage from an AA tank, you're going to be toast. But they're super powerful themselves, so the cannons absolutely rip through enemy jets, they rip through the enemy attack helicopter. You do get these 2 bombs, and it's going to take some time for me to learn how to target with them, but they are definitely capable of killing infantry. The AGMs are sort of like okay against armor. I haven't really gotten any kills with them yet, so I'm going to sort of put a pin in that, and I'll come back to it later. But one issue I do have with the main cannons is that whilst they are super powerful, they have so much spread that targeting infantry with them is almost impossible, and I've got some clips here of me trying to do just that. There is one clip where I do manage to kill an infantry player, and he almost gets like insta-gibbed, because again, if you do hit the player, they are very powerful, but they just got that much spread that it kind of comes down to luck rather than skill. You know, if you're just lucky and you're aiming, these random spread shots happen to hit him, then you got to kill him, but 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a kill. And it feels like the Battlefield 2042 system on release all over again, and if you recall, they actually did tighten up the spread in that game, so I hope they're going to do the same thing here. Now, the helicopters were actually my least favorite vehicle, and again, this could be because it felt just too difficult to stay alive. You've got the jet going after you, it does so much damage. You've got every engineer on the enemy team has a Stinger, because again, they can take a Stinger and an RPG, and unlike the jet, you can't fly out of range of the Stinger, so once you get locked on and you flare, and the flares don't last very long in this game, much shorter than in 2042, you've got to get out of dodge. And the controls of the attack helicopter, to me, it felt very sluggish. The yaw is super slow. It really needs to be tuned up a bit, because even if you crank up your mouse sensitivity, that's not going to affect the yaw on the left stick, okay? So basically, it sort of just feels like a flying barge to me. Now, the gunner seat is really fun. The gunner seat is incredibly powerful, so I don't have anything bad to say about that, although I would like to see a TV missile. I guess I could add that in. But of course, that relies on the pilot actually staying alive. So, you know, by all means, guys, if you've tried the helis, if you've tried the jets, chime in below. Let me know what you thought about them. Maybe I just need more practice, you know. So, bit of a caveat on that one. I am going to put some more time into them. And that sort of segues me nicely into a bit of an issue that I do have with the game that I was really hoping wasn't going to be there, and that is the matchmaking system. Now, there is no server browser in this beta build. I believe there is going to be a server browser in the full game. Whether that's going to be tied to the matchmaking or not, we don't really know, but I can tell you guys that the way the matchmaking works in this game is just like in 2042. That is to say, you can get the exact same round, and even with Breakthrough, I ended up having the exact same map on the exact same side, like the attacking side, 2 games in a row. So I had to quit and then matchmake again. And again, if I want to play in the helis or I want to play in the jets, I have to constantly matchmake and go back to the menus until I can get this one out of the 3 maps that actually has them on it. So I had really hoped that they'd done some, you know, magic trickery with the matchmaking system to make sure that if you just played, let's say, the Cairo map, you're not going to play it again, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So performance for me has been actually pretty good. I'm running the game here with ultra settings, everything absolutely maxed out. I do have DLSS on though, so that's at quality, but I am also running the game on a 5090, so, you know, do with that what you will. You guys can see all these stats up there in the corner. So a couple of other things that people were concerned with was the scope glint. You will notice if you play this game that the scope glint, so whenever a sniper aims down their side at you and you're not aiming down your side at them, it's really obvious. I think they've said that they are going to tone this down a bit. I think it was Drunksy, the lead designer for the game. He said it's going to be toned down somewhat. So I don't really think it matters that much, like whether it's going to be toned down or not. It's maybe just a little bit off-putting for people who are being aimed at if you see, you know, these just huge scope glints that look like suns all over the screen. But that's good to hear. Also, you will have maybe heard that suppression in this game actually delays health regen. At first, I thought, you know, oh, this doesn't sound that good. But I've got to report back, it doesn't really seem to have affected me either way, it seems absolutely fine. Same kind of thing with the open weapon system. I feel like, honestly, if I play Conquest Open or Conquest Closed, I'm just sort of playing the same game. Like, it doesn't really matter that much. You know, again, chime in down below, guys, and let me know what your thoughts are on that and what your experiences are, because I'd be very interested to hear that. But yeah, that's sort of going to sum up my first impressions of it. Obviously, I have nitpicked some little things here that I think do need tweaking and do need iterating upon. But apart from those things, the game is super solid, and I'm so happy to say that. I had a bunch of fun playing it from start to finish for 5 hours straight, so much so that I thought I'd only been streaming for like 2 hours. That's what they say, right? Time flies when you're having fun. And furthermore, it really seems like there aren't any like crazy game-breaking bugs, so unless they introduce some new bugs between now and when the game actually releases, for once, it really does seem like we're gonna get a Battlefield game that just works on release. It's not going to have any major balancing issues. There aren't going to be any major bugs that we have to overcome. I think the closest thing to a bug that I've seen are like funny ragdolls kind of flying all over the place, and honestly, I don't mind those at all. I find them quite hilarious, although sometimes I did end up dying because I was just sort of staring at it and laughing in game, but you know, that's all in good fun. So I think the future definitely looks bright for this game. When I stopped streaming, there was like 750,000 people watching the game on Twitch, over 300,000 people playing it on Steam alone. So that is basically 3 times how many people played Battlefield 2042's full release at the peak. So that is insane. And then when you consider there's people on, you know, Xbox and PlayStation, and there's a bunch of people on Epic Games Store and the EA app, it's probably like maybe even close to 2 million people playing the game. So who knows, maybe their goal of having 100 million players isn't that unrealistic after all. Now, if you're watching this video and you didn't catch the stream this morning, and especially if you still need a code to get into the early access, I will be streaming again later this evening, both here on YouTube and on Twitch. And if you watch there for half an hour, you can get a drop for a code which will allow you to log in either today or tomorrow, and then of course on the 9th it's going to open up for everybody. So if you guys want to do that, feel free to swing by the stream. I'll be there for most of the day. As always, thank you guys for watching. Leave your thoughts below. I really want to know what you guys think about the game so far, if you just watched it or hopefully if you've played it. Subscribe to stay up to date with everything Battlefield, and I will see you all in, well, probably tomorrow's video, because we're going to be doing one all about the vehicles. So take care.